house, burned down house, boarded up house, church. Rescue mission, church, another church. You ever notice that? In the inner cities and in those rough areas, it's like church, 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 church. Well, some people think, well, that's because those people need charity and the churches give. No, listen. You go into some of these churches and those community members are meeting together in worship of their God and praising God because He has shined a light into their community. I worked at rescue missions and jails and preached at them, not worked at them, but preached at them in Saginaw. And it was inner city Saginaw. We had bus ministry and we brought people in. They soaked up the love, grace, and mercy of God like nobody I've ever seen. It's amazing. Those rescue mission guys, I just loved them. And I remember, I'll never forget, the last time I was going to preach there was a community event. And they were serving like food out to the community that were coming. And I was preaching that day. And I'll never forget this. As I'm preaching, it's like a very low attendance day because most of them are working. Well, word got around that Preacher Bob was there. And all of a sudden I look up and at the back door, there's like a room full of guys in aprons and a couple with spatulas staring in. And I look over and I'm like, hey, and they're like, we wanted to say bye to you. We love you, and wave to me. And it's such a great memory in my head. You know why? They loved hearing from the man of God. It wasn't me. It wasn't Bob's great. It was, this is the man of God. And when I'd knock on doors in the inner city of Saginaw, one of the best things ever, I'd be kind of dressed up nice, right? I'd knock on the door, and it was one of two people to these people I knocked on the door of. They said, the police is here! Or they said, it's the church man. They knew it was one of two. Sometimes they'd yell, the police is here, and I'm like, no, church man. And they're like, oh, and they'd come running out. And I'd sit there and have such a great time. And they loved God. God calls to the poor, to those who don't think they have it all together, because we don't. And it's amazing how He shows Himself glorified and wonderful because we're nothing without Him. You know that? Nothing. But we're all equally nothing. And it says, but you, in verse 6, you have dishonored the poor man. Do not the rich? They oppress you, and they drag you into the courts. Do they not blaspheme that noble name by which you're called? If you actually fulfill the royal law according to the Scriptures, you shall love your neighbor as yourself, you do well. We love quoting that. But boy, do we oftentimes have trouble living that. Have you ever felt like someone has not treated you well? You come into the church and you feel rejected. You feel set aside. Have you ever belonged to a body of believers and you felt singled out and disassociated? You felt on the sideline, looking in, and no one seemed to love you. And that's inside the church. Do you remember the story of the neighbor when the men, the Pharisees and stuff asked Jesus, well, who is my neighbor, right? Who did He say was the neighbor? Remember, He told the story of the Good Samaritan, right? Samaria was a city where the Jews would go around it because they wanted nothing to do with those people, the Samaritans. Ugh. But the Samaritan is the one who stops and helps this beat up, broken man. Now a priest walked by, a Levite, they all went by and said, ooh, and they went to the other side of the road. And Jesus is showing there that an outsider, someone who didn't even belong to them, showed love. That's loving your neighbor. That's loving outside. And that is something that we're failing even on the inside. You have felt unloved. You have felt unappreciated. I'm almost positive that anyone in this room has felt that at some time. But you are loved and appreciated by your God, and we need to do a better job of loving on everybody equally equally. No matter how annoying they are, no matter how frustrating they are, no matter their faults and flaws, we must love them without partiality, because it says if you don't, it says you're a judge with evil thoughts. Evil. We can't get that word evil out of there. It is evil. You were mistreated by evil people if you were mistreated in the church. Evil people. It's pretty harsh. It says here, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You do well, but if you show partiality, listen to the next section here, you commit sin. It's sin to be partial. It's sin to look at somebody in a different way than you look at somebody else. Well, I only like my friends. Well, I only associate with so-and-so. Well, I'm a left side of the church member and they're the right side, and I don't go to the right side because so-and-so sits over on the right side and I don't want to be near them. You know, sometimes we surround ourselves with people we really love and we really enjoy. Pastors could really throw a loop to their church if they said, all right, so here's the deal. Everyone's going to be numbered 1 and 2, and everyone on the other side is going to be numbered 1 and 2, and you're going to have to switch, and all the ones sit by the ones and the 2s sit by... Man, don't do that to me. I sit by my people. I know where I belong. That is my pew. This is where I'm going to sit because so-and-so's over there. Or you see so-and-so come and sit near you, and you go, oh boy, here we go. Maybe it's a parent that has those kids. This has happened to me before. Those kids sit in front of me. And I know they're going to be distracted. I know they're going to be doing things, ripping papers up and shuffling around. And I'm like, oh, no. This family can't sit by me. Partiality. Not love. Not acceptance. Partiality. And it says, if I do that, I'm sinning. And it says, and you are convicted by the law as transgressors. He's talking to brethren. He's talking to, even earlier he said, beloved brethren. He said, if you do this, you are convicted by the law as transgressors. Why? Because when Jesus summarized the law, how did he summarize it? Number 1, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, right? Number 2, love your neighbor as yourself. If you do this, you complete that law. I mean, that is what the law is based on. That is the foundational principle of the law. So if you do not love each other, and if people do not love you, they are breaking God's law. It is evil and it is sin. We got to call it what it is. And that's what the Bible says it is. And it says you are transgressors. This is harsh. Says in verse 10, I love how he breaks it down now. He says, for whoever shall keep the whole law, and yet you stumble in just one point, he's guilty of all. That puts us on an equal plane. No matter what sin you break, whatever law you break, that is equal to breaking the whole law. If you have ever told a lie, that is as bad to God as you have murdered somebody. Well, no. Hang on. There's got to be different levels here, right? Well, remember the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus breaks it down and says, well, you say that if you murder, that's a sin. But let me tell you something. If you look at somebody and you are angry, you've sinned already. The whole adultery thing, right? If you've even lusted, you have committed adultery. Like, even having the thought breaks the whole law. And it says, you're guilty of all. In verse 11, for he who said, do not commit adultery, he also said, do not murder. Now, if you do not commit adultery, but you do murder, you have become a transgressor of the law. So speak and so do as those who will be judged by the law of liberty. For judgment is without mercy to the one who has shown no mercy. Mercy triumphs over judgment. I have to apologize to anyone in this room if Christians have hurt you. I have to. Now, I didn't do it, but as Christianity as a whole, I apologize if anyone has mistreated you, because that was evil, sin, and against our God's law. And it says here that we have not shown mercy.